In my previous videos, I was able to get these two mowers back up and running, and even though they start and run, they're not ready to be passed on to their new homes yet. Before I do that, I need to tie up some loose ends, and to be honest, it's nothing special. However, one of these has a surprise waiting for me, and it's something I've only ever heard of but never seen until now. The worst part though was the cost of the repairs. In fact, it almost made me decide not to sell them. In today's video, we look at these two mowers and get them ready to be sold on an online marketplace. Now they do run, but we only have a few things that we need to do to them to get them ready, and only then will they be ready to be posted up for sale. The problem is the cost of repairs to get them ready might be more than I'm willing to shell out. Once you see all the parts we need to replace, it'll make more sense. Now, I'm going to try and repair these mowers, however, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. Now, we're only going to mention what these other options could be. We don't have enough time to look into them, but if you need more information on these options, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you need to. The first mower we're going to look at is this orange one, and in the last video we found out that it was already in working condition and ran after putting fuel into the carb. Unfortunately, during the fuel economy testing, we had to put more than 2 ounces of fuel into the line and found out that the carb had a fuel leak, so we ended up replacing the carb at a cost of $14. Now, even though the oil was in okay condition, I like to change the oil before selling the mowers, and the reason is because it's a good selling point. Of course, it's not the only thing I do, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To change the oil, it's recommended to get the oil warm by running the engine, so this will help the engine flush out all the old oil versus doing it cold. As you just saw, I had to turn off the engine by undoing a brake cable bypass. If you hadn't guessed, that's one of the parts I need to replace. Now, even though I only ran the engine for a very short time, the engine oil isn't hot, but it should be warm enough to get all the contaminants out. While the oil is draining, I'm also going to take care of the blade. I've had a lot of people ask me about how I sharpen my blades, but I don't focus on it, and the reason is that I only put a new edge on the blade. I don't grind a new face on it, and that's it. There's nothing special about it. In fact, I don't even take enough material off to worry about them being off balance. If you're worried about a balanced blade, I would go buy a blade balancer. Now, as far as the oil I use, I typically use regular oil, no synthetic, and I also like to use 10W30. If you want to use heavy-duty 30-weight oil or even a synthetic oil, well, that's up to you. The only thing that we need to do is make sure that you don't overfill the oil. So the part finally came in the mail, and of course it's the brake cable, and to be honest, I don't normally order OEM parts because of cost, but it turns out this was the only one I could find and get in a timely manner. I bought this one for an astounding $18 shipped to my door, and if you need one of these, there should be a link in the description. Now, you might not think $18 is that much money, but once I tell you that the next time I had to buy another one of these, it was only $12. I think you realize what the difference is, and that sometimes buying an aftermarket part makes more sense. The install isn't all that difficult aside from releasing the self-propelled cable from it. Now, there are other options to replacing the entire cable, and one of them is to remove the old cable and replace just the cable. That also means you'll have to put new Z-bends on the ends of the cable as well. Although I think it's a great way to fix the cable, I do worry about the corrosion that's still inside the old cable, as it might cause the new cable to corrode as well. Now, if you choose to do it that way, I think it's a very economical way to keep the old cable from being thrown away, so I respect your decision. Once I confirm that the brake cable is working like it should, I do believe this mower is ready to be sold. The ad is going to include the description: ready to mow, new carb, new brake cable, fresh oil change, and sharpened blade. Depending upon how much the asking price is, I don't think I'll have an issue selling it and making a decent profit. We're finally done with the orange mower, so I think it's time we finally move on to the Toro. In the last video, we were finally able to get it up and running, but we had some gear issues with the wheels. After taking off the wheels for an inspection, it looks like all the teeth had worn down, which was causing our issues. Now, to be honest, I've never seen this sort of damage before, and I really thought this must have been done on purpose as a malicious act, but apparently this is common, which I find really strange that this is the first time I've ever seen it. Now, to repair this, I could have just bought new gears, but for ease of installation, I bought new wheels instead. Now, I realized that buying the gears would have been cheaper, but at the time I really didn't have a good way of replacing the gears. But since filming this video, I think I've come up with a few ideas. So more than likely, this will be the last time I buy this type of wheel with gears again. So here's what the new wheel and gear looks like, and just for comparison, this is what the old chewed up ones look like. As you can see, more than half of each tooth is gone, which I find quite unbelievable. So get a good look because I don't expect we'll see this gear look like this again. So far, I've only received one comment with a suggestion on how to remove the gear. They said they had to drill holes in the face of the wheel so they could push out the 3 pins that holds the gear to it. They suggested closing the holes in the face with RTV. I do apologize, even though that technique does work, I don't like the idea of drilling holes in the wheel. If you have a better idea, I'd really appreciate it. Now, if you don't have any ideas, it's okay because I should be showing my technique pretty soon on how I take the gear off, but for right now, these wheels will have to do. Once the wheels are back on, I'll start the mower and see how well it works. So I'd forgotten that the side chute was barely hanging on, and that's because it's missing the spring. I'm not sure what happened to it, but this is how it came to me. I had thought about screwing this down so it wouldn't open by itself, but I do have a spring off a parts mower, and I think it'd be a better idea if I replaced it instead. Now, I've never had to replace one of these before, so I wasn't sure how to install it, but after taking this one off the parts mower, I think I can figure it out. I don't know if you even use your side chute, but for me, I don't think I've ever opened mine, and that's because I typically mulch my clippings. The hardest part is stabbing the pin through the cover, the spring, and the bracket on the deck all at once while trying to tension the spring. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it, but I'm going to do the best I can. After the pin is in, I'll then test the chute to make sure it works like it should. Now, by the looks of everything, we should be done, but I want to address one more thing, and that's the airbox, specifically the cover. I think this has to be the worst thing about this engine, and the issue is how badly this cover latches to the base, which means the cover has a tendency to just fall off the base while the engine is running. After looking at the cover, I think the issue has to do with the locking tab. Now, I'd like to take the base off and look at how it clips into it, but I don't think the base is the problem. After looking at pictures of new covers, I think I know what the problem is. The tab has become tired and is no longer sitting in the correct position. The tab should be parallel with the top of the cover, but it's sagging down. What I plan to do is reshape the tab so it's sitting in the correct position. Now, I did have a few other ways of doing it, but the only one that made sense to me was to use heat. Now, a torch would heat too large of an area, so I figured using a soldering iron made more sense. Now, the tab started to move a little too easy if you ask me while I was reshaping it, so I would have liked to have braced it, but I'm going to see how well this works first. After a few minutes with the iron, the tab has moved quite a bit, so I want to show you the progress I've made. Now, it's hard to tell from this perspective just how much better it looks. However, if you look from the side, it's more obvious that the tab is in a higher position and should be able to latch on the base a lot better. Next, I'll put the cover back onto the base and see how well it works. Now, the first time I closed the cover after fixing the latch, there's now a very satisfying sound of it locking into place. Also, you now have to press the ribbed area to release the cover like you're supposed to versus just pulling the cover off to remove it. At least now I don't have to worry about the cover falling off while the mower is being used, which means this project is now done. Now, it may seem like I put too much time and effort into these mowers, and you're right to feel that way, but in the end, I think these mowers will make someone's day once they realize not just how good they look, but how well they work. And even if they don't realize the time and attention I've put into them, at least I'm very satisfied with how well these two mowers have turned out. Another reason why I put the extra time into the project is to be able to say in the ad all the extra work I've done to help ensure the buyer know that they're getting a good deal. That way they'll feel like they bought a $200 mower for only $150 that's been serviced with new parts, fresh oil, and is ready to use. If you had a repair shop do this work for you, you'd never make any money. So my question is, did I spend too much time getting these mowers into the condition they're in right now? Should I have just cleaned the carbs, replaced any missing parts, and sold them as soon as the delivery truck pulled away from my house, or was putting some elbow grease into them worth it? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.